Cat Corbett's here in his house.
This is so weird being on the other side of the microphone.
Isn't it, though?
I mean, being on the other side, like the focus of it.
Yeah, I know, right? Have you done many podcasts?
Well, I do this one called Increment Vice that is about the movie Inherent Vice. It's for super movie nerds, and it's amazing. But that's about it. I haven't done a lot of guesting on podcasts. You're like one of my first.
Ooh, well, that makes me happy. I'm excited. Because we've been working together for a long time, but I feel like there's so much about you that I don't know.
We always get each other in 30-second increments.
Exactly.
And then, there's a lot about you that I don't know either.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And we were really working opposite schedules anyways, I know. With you being middays and me at nights and stuff. But, but I always appreciated working with you. And I remember when I was really scared in 2016 when I started at KROQ, and I was super nervous, and I came in when you were doing your show, and you kind of gave me a refresher on like how to run the board.
Yeah, I remember. You came in.
You're like, you ready to steer the ship? I was like, let's go.
Little did I know you were shitting your pants. I wish I was more comforting to you. At that point.
You totally were, because you're like, it's still AV, nothing has changed. I was like, okay, cool, I can do this.
Okay, good. Because it's intimidating coming somewhere new.
Yeah.
No matter how awesome people are, you're still the new person, and you're gonna have to prove yourself. So everybody's kind of always like this. You know?
Yeah, and I hadn't done radio in like 2 years, so I was especially nervous about just everything.
Yeah.
And but most everybody was really lovely, with me coming in.
And you totally fit in. Like, we had a spot that needed to be filled, and it wasn't just that we needed to fill it. Like, you were the right person to fill that.
Thank you. So that means a lot. Yeah. Well, I've just always appreciated your insight and your wisdom. You've always been super kind to me, just like women, building up women, and I just appreciate that,
Yeah. You know what? I've talked about this once, but it made me really sad. I became aware of it a long time ago that coming up in the business, all of my mentors are men, and basically the women that I was around were not only not supportive, but very much into that tearing down mentality of other women. And I know a lot of it comes from conditioning. I have found myself catching myself from stuff that I grew up with that was around me, and I was like, wait, what? Why did I just say that, do that, accept that as normal, that kind of stuff? And I know it was a long chain of, people where they come from. But I was like, you know what? I am not going to be that woman. That's not going to happen. And I don't care how many times I've been baited, which is really what it is. I was like, nope. I'm not biting. You can just do whatever you want, but I'm going to be over here being awesome.
Yeah.
So when you catch up, that's cool, but it was something that was really powerful for me. I didn't have a lot of the women in my life were that way as well. They grew up in a situation like old school Italian Catholic, like women were in the kitchen, like, and that was expected of me. I was like, my mother was like, "You're gonna get married out of high school." She didn't want me going to college, and I was like,
gosh.
I don't even have a boyfriend.
So I guess that we could segue into that really is so you grew up in Boston, right?
Yeah.
So maybe just talk a little bit about, that whole upbringing and maybe, what was expected of you versus what ended up happening.
Well, it's funny. I started writing a memoir, and I'm like, not that anybody would care, but perhaps there's a shared experience. So I grew up, and by the way, I didn't know I was this type of person until I watched The Departed. This is how most of my life, I figured out things in life about sex, love, things. It's all in movies. That's how I figured it out. You're like, nobody talks about sex in your house when you're Italian, Catholic, or Irish. Like, it just, nobody has problems. You don't talk about it.
Right.
Watching The Departed. And that scene when Martin Sheen and Mark Wahlberg are grilling Leo DiCaprio, and Mark Wahlberg's like, "I bet you have two different accents. I bet he's like, "You're a double kid, aren't you? Like, the other side doesn't know where you're going on the other days." And I was like, oh my God, I'm a double kid.
Oh my God.
Because I went to school like Monday through Friday. I went to white suburbia school, and then Friday afternoon to like Sunday night or before school on Monday was spent in East Boston, which is a very depressed airport town. It's if you watch Mystic River, that's my aunt's neighborhood. That is where I grew up. So it's like during the week, I'm like trying to be a cheerleader. And then on the weekend, I'm like figuring out how to steal shit from the corner store because, and you never told the other
one about the
groups because you'd get your ass kicked. I'd be ostracized in the suburbs for hanging out with like low rent folks because that's where my Italian side grew up. But if I told the East Boston crew where I was going to, middle class suburbia, I'd get my ass kicked. So it was a very strange, and no adult ever thought to say, this is weird. This is a strange dynamic. But I just intrinsically knew, and my brother knew, you just don't talk about it with the other side. So that double kid thing resonated. I mean, I remember seeing it and freaking out and texting my brother. I'm like, have you seen The Departed yet? And he's like, no, I'm going to go. I'm like, we need to talk afterwards. And I was just like, it's so weird when a piece of your life falls together in like 30 seconds, you figure something out.
Yeah, like something you didn't even know kind of existed.
Yes.
It's like you did, but then you finally really put it together.
And then I was like,
that's what it was.
We're not the only ones. And I was like, it made me feel a little less alone in the world because I feel like that was like set up my life, like this double life all the time.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So Monday through Friday, you're with your parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then on the weekends, you're like with your extended family at your aunt's house.
We're like, I look at pictures of my brother and I, like in East Boston, like at the park across the street from my aunt's house. And like, we're so cute and we're like hugging each other. But there's like, that's the park where all the drug deals went down.
Yeah, totally.
like broad daylight right behind me. There was probably like somebody doing a deal.
Did you ever feel like you were out of your just kind of your comfort zone when you were there on the weekends, or you would notice things that were happening that you're kind of like, this seems a little sketchy or weird?
I didn't. Not that I felt out of my comfort zone in either one of those things, but I definitely felt like an alien in both places. Because I had this secret I couldn't tell anybody because I was like, I was already awkward. So I'm not going to amp it up and be like, hey, by the way, I'm hanging out with my grandfather who doesn't speak English. Oh, and he's got a vineyard, a bootleg vineyard, and bootlegging wine, behind San Tarpio's. Like, oh my God, yeah. Like that was like, I would spend Saturdays with my grandfather, his other Italian friends who came over, on the boat, who none of them spoke English, and we were just dropped off in the vineyard in the middle of East Boston. It's the city. The airport's like right there. And we would sit and they would play like mandolin and sing Italian songs and bootleg press their wine. And I was like,
I didn't even know you could grow grapes in Boston.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's that. And then, it's like, now I think about those things fondly, but back then it was really difficult that nobody thought to sit down and be like, hey, this might be rough on you because you're trying to navigate these two worlds. And I felt like, I was like, I always thought, like, does everybody else have a double life? Like,
right.
And they're not talking about it kind of thing.
Yeah. But I think a lot of people do. And I feel like only now are parents to where maybe it's the opposite, like to a crazy extreme where they're communicating with their kids and coming to their kids and saying, hey, how does this make you feel? Or I'm sorry or whatever, Yeah. Whereas, my parents never came and talked to me about anything either. I was just always like, what the hell is going on? I have no idea what you guys are talking about in this Persian house, like, over at my mama's house. I don't know what's going on, but,
I'm so thankful for like Judy Blume for writing books about sex when I was like,
that's how you learned about all this stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or like, really watching movies about like, and figuring that stuff out. It kind of sucks.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I had no like guidance with any of that stuff.
Right. So you and I have been two women stumbling through life.
Trial and error, trying to figure it out. A lot of awkward times.
I feel like we would have saved a lot of time if we could have someone just said, hey, this is this, and we'd be like, okay, all right.
Yeah, it would have for sure helped.
Yeah.
So, is anyone in your family like musical, or what do you? I mean, I guess you were talking about how they would play like mandolin and stuff like that.
They were. My dad was musical, but everyone else just loves music.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, growing up with an old school Italian family, and my mom being the youngest of 10, it was. I was getting a range of music. I mean, I was getting like, the El Martinos and Frank Sinatra's Rat Pack stuff. Then I was getting like the Doors and Beatles and, that kind of stuff. And then Motown. So I had this very amazing musical upbringing. Elvis Presley to Elvis Costello, like you name it. They had all the records. So that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody ever, really played.
Yeah, but you were just exposed to like a lot
Yeah.
of like an eclectic kind of background with music.
Yes.
Yeah.
I listen to a lot of like I can name a lot of songs. People will probably be like, "What?" And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, I grew up on it."
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I think it shows in your musical sensibility that you just know about so much stuff. You know about so much
that. Like you sit around and you pay attention,
Yeah.
and if it's something you love, you just absorb it. Like especially when you're a kid,
Yeah.
you just take that all in.
Oh,
like,
for sure. I mean, my favorite memories are being in my dad's car listening to oldies and just needing to know like who each band was, and I just loved it so
right,
much.
like reading the liner notes and
Mhm.
like what does that lyric mean? That's so crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I went through phases obsessed with like the Who and Springsteen and Van Halen and Prince and just all of that, and then I found goth and I was like. Everybody step aside.
Did your parents freak out
though?
though?
It was punk rock and goth, and I was just like, oh my god, like I felt like my head exploded.
Yeah.
And yes, I would get yelled at a lot to turn that racket down. I'm sure everybody's heard that thing before. But then I would like find my mother singing words to songs. Like, Big Mouth Strikes Again from the Smiths while doing the dishes. And I'm like, oh my God, she's just picking up.
It's getting in there.
Yeah, it's all these things. So it's kind of my revenge.
And did your style change to where they were like noticing you dressing differently and sort of?
Yes.
Okay.
And that, again, as like a girl growing up, that's really hard because I was like, all of a sudden I'm in Doc Martens, and I'm like, ripped t-shirt kind of thing, and it's like again, they're old school, so they're like, why are you dressing like a man?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I love David Bowie, like why wouldn't I try to be androgynous a little bit, and that really sucks when they're not supportive, like it's just that weird tearing you down in your own home situation.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they don't think they are.
Right. They're just like traditional.
Yeah. And so it's like one of those things where, but, I think that's just always been part of my spirit of just like, fuck you, basically, to everybody.
Totally. Rebel spirit.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, you have those, I definitely had those moments where I was like, all right, I'm not going to listen. I wasn't even one of those kids, the kids that like put their costume in the backpack and change once they leave the house. I was like, no, I'm like, this is what I'm wearing and I'm leaving the house like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you definitely have this thing about you, which I really admire, and that is that you really know who you are. I feel like you have a really good sense of who you are. You're not apologetic about it. You know what you believe in, and you're passionate about the things that you believe in.
Do you feel the same way about yourself?
I don't. I feel like I feel like I know who I am in some regards, but as far as a lot of things like politics, I have no idea what I believe in, and because I'm so skeptical of everybody,
mm-hmm.
I feel like I can't believe anything. There's
a lot of bullshit that's just
right.
out there on all sides. So
yeah,
it's tough.
And then I just feel like I might feel passionately about something, but I don't necessarily do everything that I can to sort of like, I don't know, be about that cause or something like that. I'm kind of like, oh, I'll do a little of this and I'll like volunteer here and then there, but not really
Put your stake in the ground.
Yes.
You know what? I'll tell you this, because I'm a bit older than you. So it takes a long time. And I honestly, I haven't figured it all out. I have these... I do know what I believe in. Like, I remember, my dad was an amazing man, and he would give me these little nuggets He worked really hard. And I know, watching my dad, like, he had a lot of unfulfilled dreams. And I just knew that growing up. And that really crushed me. And I was like, I'm not going to let anybody stop even my wildest fantasy about doing something. You know, even when there's all these people going, no, 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 which they have. I mean, my family still, how long have I been doing this? My family still isn't. They're like, what exactly do you do? And you're like, oh my God. You know, like that.
Yeah.
But my dad said to me a long time ago, he was just like, the only thing you really have is your integrity. And your integrity, everything branches out from that. Love, like work, respect, everything. If you are, you know, if your integrity is intact, then everything else will fall into place. And I was like, all right, if I can figure out what that is, if I can figure out like what my baseline is and what I believe in as far as being good to people and religion and all that stuff, and then I'll be good. And that was a really good place to be. Because I was like, and I wasn't a great kid growing up. Like, I was so insecure about my double life that I was kind of a dick in school because it just sucked. So I tried to puff myself up and make myself be like appear better. Mm-hmm. And, you know, like, oh, everything's great at home, or my family's fabulous. But it wasn't. Mm-hmm. So once I started kind of realizing that, I was like, all right, I need to make amends. This is not the person I want to be. I want to be a person that people, you know, want to be around, want to work with, want to, you know, experience and like stand by my word. Like, if I say I'm going to do something, I do it. That's it. That's happening. And so that was just a decision I made, like, in my early 20s. But I didn't find that until I found my people. Mm-hmm. And my people were my first radio station, and they got me.
So how did you get from, you know, being that young girl, you know, at your aunt's house on the weekends, watching your grandparents or your grandpa, you know, play mandolin, to then eventually landing that, you know, into your job, your first radio job? And it's all, everybody's story is always so different when it comes to like getting into radio.
You know, it's a tough grind. I was living in the north end of Boston, and I didn't have a car. My favorite radio station was a half mile outside of Boston in Lynn, Massachusetts. And I'm like, how the hell am I? And the only shift I could work really was a morning show because I had school during the day. And so I was looking, and I was like, I don't want to get coffee. I don't want to go to the big station and get coffee, even though it's close. Like, I want to learn how to edit. I want to learn how to do stuff. And the only place that was available was this Christian gospel station run by ministers. And I'm like, oh, God, I'm an atheist or agnostic. I don't know what I am. But I'm like, I'm not down with the religion. I'm an ex-Catholic. Mm-hmm. I went through that crap, right? So I'm like, you know what? But fine. Like, they're going to show me how to edit. I learned how to edit sermons. Like, I would take out the coughs that the ministers were saying, and I was like, but I was learning how to edit, and I was so appreciative of it, and they were so nice, and so that was how I learned how to edit, and it really lit a fire under me. And it was so funny because, like, after being there for 3 months, they were like, do you want to do the morning show? And I'm like, oh my God, how do I, these people were lovely, but that wasn't my passion, obviously. So my dad was like, look, I will drive you to FNX every day. He was coming from the suburbs, so he drove a half hour from the suburbs to pick me up in the north end, to drive me a half hour to Lynn, and then drive back 45 minutes to go to his job. Aww. Monday through Friday. Yeah, it's crazy.
That's so sweet.
It was like a super sacrifice. And that's one of those things too where it's like, you don't like make somebody do that and then not follow up. Mm-hmm. And that's the whole, integrity thing. And so I got on the morning show there, and I learned a lot. Like, they took it next level. Like, I was doing voices. Yeah. Like, you remember when the first time someone called you in to do a voice on air, and you were like, what? I'm going to get a commercial or a promo or something?
Yes.
It was so thrilling. And all those people at FNX, it was an indie rock station, and that was where I was at. The goth, the punk rock, the indie rock. And I was like, these without even, it's that language. Like, you don't have to explain anything. Like, I get you losers because I'm one of you losers.
Yep. And have that bond over music and just lifestyle and culture. So did you just like apply like regular? You just applied to the radio station?
It was for an internship.
So, it was okay.
And by the way, I interned Monday through Friday, 5 a.m. to 11 a.m. No pay, 5 days a week. And by the way, Lynn is a city that is here's the thing, they say Lynn, the city of sin, you never come out the way you went in. It's like, it's a rough town. It's super rough. And they would send me out with like a DAT player and a microphone to like interview like hookers and junkies. And I'm like, if my parents only knew, and I never told them any of that, they still don't know. Don't send them this tape. The stuff where I was like, I'm not saying no. Like, I'm going to do this. Like, if I don't do it, somebody else will. And so I just did everything that was asked of me. And eventually I got hired. I did lots of college radio. I did college radio where I didn't even attend school because I found out that, like Christmas breaks and summer breaks, everybody goes home and they have no one to fill the gap. So like I could do a show at Framingham State or Salem State, like do these shows. So that's what I did just to get good and like constantly do stuff. And then I finally got a part-time job at FNX on air, and I was like, I'm making $6 an hour. I've made it.
But it's such a great feeling, And
where was your first gig?
Mine was at 91X as an intern, doing promo.
Similar station.
Yep, and it was when Capone was doing afternoons. So like in this weird way, like that was how I met Lisa like many years ago, which sort of led me to coming here to KROQ too. You know what I mean?
Circle,
like full circle. Yeah. And I was a promotions intern. So it was like promo crew. And then inevitably I got fired because I was getting fucked up and I couldn't just go get the slip, filled out that I needed to turn back in. But then I ended up moving to the Bay and then starting at Live 105. So it kind of worked out,
Yeah.
Yeah. I would get stuff and then I'd fuck it up, and then I'd get stuff and then fuck it up. That was my story. So this time we're gonna try not to do that.
What do you think? I don't mean to psychoanalyze you, but like, why do you self-sabotage? Because I'm
drug
guilty
addict.
of that.
Because I'm a drug addict.
Right.
Like full-fledged.
And
like,
I know you, and I know you've been working really hard.
Yeah.
Are you still in that diving deep into figuring out why, or do you know why?
I believe that I was like, that you're born like that. And then I believe that the only thing that keeps me sober and sane is 12-step stuff.
Right.
So I'm very active in the 12-step recovery.
And I love you
world.
for that.
Yeah.
And I know it's not easy. It's one of those interesting things because I have a lot of friends in the program. And it's really hard working in the music business because you're constantly around an element of debauchery all the time. So, like, I commend you and I commend all of my friends doing it.
Thank you.
And it's also weird to be, it's like, it kind of sucks because, from the other side, it's like, oh, I don't think I can hang out with these people because I'm always going to a thing that has the alcohol or the whatever. Right. And, that's something for a lot of us to deal with as well. Like, it's a really different headspace. But I totally appreciate your struggle, and I appreciate why that you're public about it and that you're, talking to a lot of people.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. It just, I'm like, I want to just be as open as I can about it because I don't carry any shame about it anymore like I once did. Like I really just own it. And I just think it's important for people to know that they can get better because like I was one of the worst, I was just into the hardest shit and it was just absolutely awful. And but yeah, so I think for me it's like it's just gotten to this place where I just accepted it, and I was just like, here's what I have to do like every day, like these are the things I have to do every week just to stay sane and focused, and I just know that's my responsibility. And then also if I'm somewhere and I feel super uncomfortable, then I need to leave, but really I'm just kind of at this place where like I don't really mind. Like, I don't mind, like, being around people who are drunk. Good. Like, I don't, I don't mind the alcohol. It's like, it's not even that I have the desire to drink now. It's more just, like, dealing with my the stuff that my head likes to tell me, we're
yeah,
dealing
we
with that
all
stuff.
have that. Like,
absolutely.
I've certainly self-sabotaged myself.
Yeah.
I've certainly gone down those roads. I've actually now turned it into anxiety. That's like the thing that I deal with a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Lots of anxiety. And as well as I do that it's like you just got to flip that switch, even though you're like near panic attack and you have to go on stage. It's like, hi.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And you're like, I'm dying.
Like dying on the inside. Yeah.
And I'm going to collapse right now and no one knows
and
what I'm
sometimes
faking
you're
it.
like physically like shaking, like that's the worst. That's the worst.
Yeah. I've had anxiety and depression all my life, but I feel like it's getting worse. I feel like my anxiety is getting worse. And I don't know why that is.
Right. I know. Well, part of me wonders because I feel the same way where, I just feel like now since so many people are anxious all the time, does that feed into it where because the anxiety levels are higher than ever. How can all of us feel anxious?
Well,
Why
know
is that?
Now that you say that, it's like the political landscape has certainly, I have been angry for like 2 years now, like really angry and really, really full of anxiety. And I know that that's part of it because I'm just one of those personalities. Like I just can't look away, and
you're passionate about it.
Well, and I also am passionate about telling people that's not right, like, or telling people to fuck off, like whatever it is. I'm like, I don't think I'm a great champion of things, but like there has to be people that say what's right.
Yeah.
That like stand up and say this is bullshit.
Totally.
And so I hate bullies. I've always been that person. I've stepped in before because, at the end of the day, they're just scared little shits, and they're really good at making themselves look like victims, like really good bullies. So I learned that a long time ago, and I was like, I don't tolerate that stuff at all, and it makes me kind of crazy. And I also have like my entire family, my old school family, that is like, supporting someone that I think is atrocious, and so it's really hard. Like I hadn't been home for Christmas in a couple of years. Like this was the first Christmas I went home.
Yeah.
And I was
because does it always come up?
Yes. And I'm like, I'm not, because I live in LA. I must be Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
So that's a really difficult thing. I just found out that when I bring one of my dogs home, like they forget about everything.
That's nice.
He's like this crazy, like he has superpowers. He just sucks
Wolfie?
Blue.
Oh, Blue. Oh yeah, Blue.
He just sucks all the bad shit into himself, and he has no idea. And he's just like whatever. And I'm like, it was the best visit ever.
Oh, that's so great.
But it just yeah. So I've always had anxiety, going up, and there's nothing worse than going on stage when you're feeling like that.
Yeah. Isn't it weird how we chose these, or I don't know if you feel like you chose this field or if it kind of chose you in a way, but I just am like, I can't believe I ended up doing this when I have so much anxiety all the time and I feel like a nervous wreck. But other people are always like, I'd never be able to know that because we just hide it. We just
really
stuff
good,
it,
yeah. Well, I think, before, look, I was like, this job is like behind the microphone in a room by myself. It's perfect.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
For an introvert, it's like perfect. And then it's like, oh yeah, now we want you to be on camera all the time and go out and do stuff. And you're like, what?
All the time. Like the on-camera stuff is just more and more and more now too,
Yeah, and you're like, and I was like, I thought I was going to be able to like, I don't know, just like be in sweats later in my life. And now it's like, shit.
I know.
Now I got to like eat a protein diet and all that stuff.
Oh
so
yeah, I know.
It just all ties into it. It's a very strange thing, and especially where we work in Hollywood, there's always someone or something that is always ready to cut you down. And which is really just horrible. And as well as I do. So someone was like, I can't believe Like, I would rather get up and on a stage with 100,000 people than get on stage at the Troubadour, because at the Troubadour, you can hear when someone says something.
Mm-hmm. I would too.
You know, it's like you can hear when someone's like, you suck.
Totally. And you can see them all.
Yes.
Whereas, like, you know, we do our stage announcements for our big shows, and I'm like, oh, I can do that in my sleep. Like, I don't care how many thousands of people are here. It's great. But if, like, when we do our sound spaces and stuff, so nerve-wracking.
Oh, yeah.
So nerve-wracking, you know?
It really is, because it's just that, you know, it's intimacy.
Yeah.
So maybe we have intimacy issues.
Yes. Ding, ding, ding. I know, I do.
Yeah, I know. I love that we're like psychoanalyzing each other.
I know.
I don't have to pay my therapist anything this week.
Okay, wait. So you're working at the station just outside of Boston, and then you're also doing the college stuff sometimes.
Doing college stuff,
yeah.
Doing the station. Then I once I got hired on air, I was also simultaneously working for like the biggest concert promoter in New England, Don Law. He did all the big. He was like the Bill Graham of the East Coast. Okay. Like, so we did everything from the giant, like, you know, giant outside sheds to the small clubs. So I got to see everything. Like, everything, even stuff that I never thought I would go see, like Neil Young. You know what I mean? But like, I got to like go because I was working, or like Pink Floyd. I was almost killed by one of their falling pigs one time.
God.
Like, that's a long story about being stoned at a Pink Floyd show. But you know, so I was working and by the way, so there was a point where I worked 7 days a week for 3 years. Mm-hmm. No vacation, no day off, and you know this, you always work holidays when you're in the new one. So you're always working holidays. I worked for 3 years. I was working Monday through Friday at Don Law and going to shows at night. And then on the weekends, I was doing shifts at FNX. Mm-hmm. So it was just, again, like one of those, when people are like, you're so lucky. I'm like, well, actually, I busted my ass.
Totally. I did the same.
You know?
Yeah. I worked 7 days a week, too.
Yeah. Holidays, you're like, there's no question. You don't cry about it. You just do it.
And I was like excited about all of it. Like, I was like stoked, you know, because I was doing the night shows and early morning weekends and going to school full time.
Yeah.
And I fucking was stoked, you know. I got in the door. You know?
Friends were out partying on a Friday night, and I'm like, I had to do the overnight, so I was like, I had to like be in and sleep if I could, but I was so excited just to be on the air that I didn't care. I was like, I'm out Monday through Friday at a show all the time with these people. I'm not missing anything. Mm-hmm. So I did that. And then it was I was also working on indie films in Boston. And so I was kind of, because I always love film and TV and all that. And I was like, I really just, you know, and I'd started writing, like, didn't know what I was doing, but writing. And so I wanted to work on films. And so I got to meet a lot of people on sets doing the films. And I was like, I'll never forget. It was like a worst winter ever in Boston, like freezing cold, like the kind that like you feel like your bones are breaking, like you can't like be small enough, and like just like crying colds.
I don't even think I've probably ever experienced that kind of cold
I don't
before.
Cry,
yeah.
And I was like, get me out of here. So I just by chance, you know, the universe throws you a bone. I ran into my friend's brother, and he was like, hey, I'm moving to LA in a few months. Come to my going away party. I was like, do you need a roommate? Like, I just said it, like it just came out. And he's like, that would be awesome. And I was like, and I just made the decision, I'm moving to LA. Wow. Like, that was it. I was like, I have a roommate. At least I have somebody I know I can split the rent with. But this is not working for me anymore. I learned what I could learn, but it's Boston. Like, where am I going to? This is not where all my dreams are going to come true. Mm-hmm. And I always wanted to be in LA. So packed up the car, packed up the dog, drove the southern route so we could go to Graceland.
Yes.
Meteor City. I was like, we're going to the largest ball of twine if this is on the
hell
thing,
yeah.
you know, that kind of thing.
I want to do that all at some point in my life.
It's a fantastic thing. It's also, I think, really good to see the way the other part of the country lives, because there are vast differences between where I grew up and then all these other people I was experiencing, you know, and which was amazing, and they were awesome and lovely, and like you just open your mind when you travel. So then I came out here and I didn't have a job. Like, I just quit.
Right.
And I like temped. And you know how soul crushing that is to temp after you've been like doing a morning show?
I know.
You're like, I'm getting
humbling.
some like crazy bitch at New Line her coffee and scheduling her Pilates classes when I was like, I was just hanging out with the Beastie Boys. Like, what? Oh my God, it was such a head trip. And so I was like dying. And a friend of mine who works at a record label, DreamWorks, she was like, dude, there's a station called Y107 in Pasadena. It's kind of, it's an alternative station. Because I think I sent a demo into KROQ, but I didn't know you had to like keep calling. Like, I just thought I'd send it in and they'd be like, you're amazing. Come on in.
Totally.
Oh my God.
Where have you been our whole life?
We have been waiting for you, Kat. Yeah, hi. So I just was like, the depression sets in. You're like, oh my God. And, my friend was like, look, I can get you a meeting with, the PD at Y107. And I was like, great. And I go and I meet the PD and he's amazing. And he's like, do an audition. And then they hired me for weekends. And then they were putting together a morning show. And it was with Chris Hardwick and Cortland Cox. Now, both of those dudes had history with KROQ. I didn't know that, but, they did. And so they were like, we need the female sidekick. And I was like, sure, that's awesome. And I was able to quit that temp job, which was such a relief because it was soul crushing. So I did that show with those guys for a year.
So you know Chris Hardwick?
Yeah.
I love him.
Yeah. So, super nerd.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had a really good time. And then Chris left because he was doing some shows or whatever. So then me and Cortland took over and did the show. But it became apparent that no one in management was paying attention to the station at all. And we were like, oh my God. Like, I literally was like, blew off the playlist that they gave me. And I was playing like Rollins Band at like 8 a.m. in Los Angeles radio. I was like,
so
this is how I know no one's paying attention upstairs. Like, I would just play. I had Buffalo Tom come play live, their Boston band in the studio. Like, I was like,
how fun.
And Cortland's just sitting back laughing like, this is amazing, So thankfully, gratefully, they fired all of us. Like, I was like begging. I was like, please fire all of us. But I didn't get quite fired. This is amazing. This is the scumbag move that they pulled on me. So, I'm getting full-time salary when I worked there. And they're like, all right, look, we fired everybody, but we want you to stay because we think we want to put you on the new morning show that we put together. Right? So they wanted me to just do like a part-time weekend shift, but like not even give me like 2 weeks from firing me for my full-time job. Like no severance, nothing. They were like, yeah, we just want you to go from full-time to like 1 day a week and not say anything about it.
And then like maybe you'll be on the new morning show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like total like awful. And I was like, you motherfuckers. And I was like, absolutely. Like I started calling like the GM. I got a cell phone number and I'm like, dude, you want a happy employee? You got to give me a buffer. You just ripped the carpet out from under me and you're trying to make me not collect certain things because I'm still employed kind of thing. It was like all this double talk. And I was like, oh my God. So our big Christmas show, kind of like the KROQ Almost Acoustic Christmas, was at Universal Amphitheater, and it was like Devo and the Violent Femmes, and I like love those bands. But while and I was supposed to go to that, and I was like, yeah, sure. But while everybody was at that show, I was in the studio at Y107 making my demo tape for KROQ, and I was like, see ya, dudes. I did that tape that night, and then I never went back. And that's, because I had the studio.
Yeah, totally.
And no one was around. No one asked me any questions. And I was like, cool. Yeah, so that's what happened. I know, it's crazy. So then I had to go back to temping. Seriously, it's like a soul crushing. If I tell you, so then I ended up working for this crazy couple who's selling like these religious music compilations for an exorbitant amount of money. I'm talking like $125 for like a 5 CD like plastic hamburger pack of like B and C level gospel artists, right?
Oh my God.
And I would have to open the checks of people who, it'd be like, we're not going to get our electricity this month. We thought this was more important to,
God.
And I'm like, oh, this is why I have problems with religion.
Yeah.
Like this stuff. And these people they were just total scammers, like I just knew it. Like they just found their niche and they were like, oh, all right, this is how we can exploit it.
Right.
This is a total sidebar. I don't know if I'm going on.
No, you're good.
Because this is why I'm like, I feel like I have to write my memoir. There's just so many kooky, shitty things.
Yeah,
You're like, whatever. This wasn't shitty. This was interesting. So they were like, the internet. Help our guy Rio figure out our website. Like he's, our internet guy, but we need to make it look, all these things. I was like, great. Rio was this very soft-spoken, very nice gentleman, right? And and I'm a wise ass, this. So I would always kind of like, prod him. Like I could see like once in a while I get him to chuckle. Like that was my goal every day to like get him to laugh at something totally inappropriate, even, while he's doing this stuff. And he was very sweet. And like a month after like dealing stuff and getting the website up, one of the other guys, and he's like, you don't know who Rio is, do you? And I'm like, no. And he's like, he's the one who found the bodies for the Hale-Bopp comet. He was part of the cult, and he, at the last minute, decided not to do it.
Oh, my God. Oh. How many were there that didn't drink the Kool-Aid? He's one of them.
They were like, our lobby was packed with reporters for like 2 months. You could not get in this building. And I was like, what the hell? Like, Hollywood's amazing.
Yeah, really.
And like a month later, I go back to Boston, do a visit. I'm getting my hair cut. I'm waiting in my old hairdressers, because you do that until you get a new hairdresser,
Right.
And I'm waiting, and I'm looking through the magazines on the table, and it's all of a sudden I see People magazine, the 10 most fascinating people, and he's on the cover.
Oh, are you serious?
And I was like, serious? I'm sitting there in the waiting room, and I'm like, nobody knows.
You're like, hey, it's my friend.
And I'm like, oh my God. Another thing I didn't tell my parents because they would have been like, cults. Oh my God, get back here right now.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know.
That is so random.
It's totally random.
Oh my God.
So I just was like, what is it going to take? And I just remember being on my lunch and calling KROQ and trying to leave a message for Kevin Weatherly. This is a true story. And, they were like, can we take a message? And I'm like, yeah, just send him a demo, looking to get a part-time gig. No response back. Call the next day. And same thing. And I was like, I'm going to call this fucker every day and leave a message, right? Like, that was it. Like, I just, lost it. This is one of the moments.
This is why I love you, though. This is so good. So awesome.
This is one of those things, when you stop kind of worrying about the small stuff, when you stop giving a shit, that you actually succeed.
Totally.
Because you have you're just
you
done.
let it all go. Yeah.
And that's what happened. And so I call the next day. And it's our friend Doris, who, Doris, who works at Sony.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was his assistant.
Oh, my God. Oh, wow.
Yes,
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Oh, shit.
So so I call up, and I'm like, she knows me, right, at this point. And she's like, do you want to leave a message? And I'm like, yes. And I want you to take this down verbatim. Just wondering if I suck or not. And there's like a long pause. And I'm like, verbatim. I want that on the message.
Yeah.
She's like, okay. But he called me back 20 minutes later.
Wow.
And was like, I'm so sorry. I've been so busy. We're trying to get Weenie Roast together or whatever. And I was like, he's like, I would love to have you in for an audition. And so that's what happened.
Wow. Holy shit.
Right?
Wow.
But it was one of those things where I was like, again, that I love that Cameron Crowe, Almost Famous, be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid.
Yes.
That's literally what happened.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Because, that's the way to stand out, too. You know what I mean? To be like, take this down.
Well, I really just wanted to know.
What do I need to fix? If you don't like this, what?
Right. Or if you think I'm not KROQ's type, I will accept that. That's totally fine. And, because I was honestly vacillating between approaching KCRW because, frankly, that was a little bit more my speed because of my indie rock background.
Yeah.
But I was like, I of course, KROQ's legendary. Why wouldn't I want to be a part of that? And so I just wanted, and I keep that always in mind when bands send me demos and stuff, they just want to know. And I realized like I can't respond to everybody that like, no, this isn't going to work. Oh, this is why. Because there's just seriously
so much.
There's so many. And so I'm really sensitive about that. You know, I'm sure the people calling Weatherly was a lot less, you know, but I just needed to know that. I just needed to know if I wasn't right. And then I could sleep at night, but not getting an answer was like driving me crazy.
Yeah, because you don't know what to do or where to go. Yeah. So how old were you when you got hired at KROQ?
I'm not telling you.
Okay.
This is Hollywood, bitch. I'm not telling anybody.
And where? Well, okay, and then
here's the thing. You know this. You work in music. It stunts our growth. I will forever be like 22.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't care how old I get. I will be 22 mentally.
I know. Yeah, I know. It happens to us.
I will be like in a wheelchair with an oxygen mask, still trying to figure out like what show to go to. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
1000%.
Yeah.
And so when you came in, what did you start like weekends, part times, or?
I started part time. By the way, this is really funny because when Jean, our lovely friend Jean Sandblom, was amazing. And I'm on my cell phone. It has like one block left of stuff, and he's trying to tell me everything I need to know for my audition over the phone. I've never seen the studio ever,
God.
and my friend is like, "Don't worry about it. That studio's like a piece of shit. They're not digital or anything." And I was like, "All right, fine. This should be cool." I get in. Now Loveline's still running, right? And I'm doing. I'm still temping, so I tempt all day. Try to take a nap. I'm gonna do the overnight audition Thursday into Friday, and then still go to my temp job Friday.
Oh, shit.
You know, that kind of thing.
Wow.
And I get in the studio, and Loveline's on, and I see that it's Audio Vault, which I had never used before in my life. And the board op that was board opping Loveline couldn't care less. She was like, "No thanks," and like basically was like, this, and this, and was like, "Peace out." And I was like,
that's a nightmare. That's a nightmare to walk into.
So I couldn't do my show because I was just praying to God I didn't like knock us off the air or have dead air or all that stuff. Thankfully, Gene was like, "We heard something in the tape that sounds like you could fit here." I was like, "Thank you, God." But so I actually got I was really lucky. They put me on like Saturday afternoons, like pretty quickly. Like so I was like, meeting Jed and Richard Blade and Tammy Heidi and like all those, like weekend people. And, I've said this publicly and I meant it because this, it's really hard being the new girl. And that's why I was like trying hopefully to be comforting to you when you started here because it's rough. No matter how nice people are, you still have to prove yourself. Yeah. And so, you kind of get the cold. You're the new kid. It's really hard.
Yep. A lot of egos and stuff.
Yeah. And I was feeling that a lot. And I was like self-sabotaging. I was like, I can't do this. This is awful. I'm the worst. Oh my God. And Bean came in on his day off, and he came in the studio and he said, "I'm so glad you're here." And I was like, I get teary-eyed thinking about it because he threw me a lifeline and he didn't know it. Like he was just being nice and I was like, from that moment on, I was like, I can do this. Like I can deal with being the new girl until I'm not. But up until then, I was drowning, like really drowning. And so that was a good, again, lesson for me to like want to pass that on to anybody who starts new anywhere of, not being the person who's giving you the cold shoulder.
Right.
Like I have the information. Why not share it so your life is a little easier?
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, it's just like so. I just like appreciate anybody who's helpful, and I know that I in the past have maybe not been the nicest person when I was like at Live 105 and I was using and all that stuff. But
that's what drugs are.
Yeah, seriously.
Drugs are
but
bad.
I really do try to now to just be as helpful to other people as I possibly can be.
There's that competition thing, and it really stinks. Because there's a finite number of radio positions, and so I think it's like it just ingrained in that thing of like, if I show this person and make it easy for them, they could take my job one day. Well, the thing is you're going to lose your job if you lose your job. Like there's so many variables. And I was like, I'm not going to play into that. I wasn't after anybody's full-time job.
No, neither was I.
I never even asked.
When I was filling in on nights here, and then Nicole came back, I did not think that they were. I just thought, oh, well, then they'll just call me when they need me, which could be once a month or twice a month.
Right.
I didn't think they were going to give me weekends. So I went and I got a retail job. So I was working a retail job when Lisa, pulled me in and was like, actually, like, we want to put you on weekends and fill-ins. And then, and because I didn't expect anything from this place. I didn't expect anything.
Retail was your temping.
Yeah. And I worked at a vape shop. I rolled rags.
Probably not the best place for you to work.
Well, that's all we do. All we do is smoke. But like, so it's, it's like I never, I don't know. I think my attitude is just like, I don't want to ever take anything from anybody else. I just want to learn from people. Yeah. And then like any opportunity that comes, like I want to be able to seize that, but I never want to take anything from anybody. And I'm never ever like coveting somebody's thing that they're doing.
No, never. Yeah. I mean, and everybody thinks, like I was put in after Tammy Heidi. It was actually Jed the Fish. Mm-hmm. They put Jed the Fish in when Tammy Heidi left. Mm-hmm. And then I get this call from Weatherly, and he's like, hey, you know what? Jed's a little too wacky after the Kevin and Bean show wacky. He's like, I need something in the middle of the wacky. And I'll never forget this day because so he pitches this like doing the show, which would then have shaved an hour off of everybody's gig, Nicole and Stryker's, which would mean 3-hour shifts instead of the 4-hour shifts. And I was like, look, I want to talk to both of them and make sure they're cool with this because, and they were like, we're getting paid the same, but do less. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
But, and make sure that they weren't, going to be like, oh, crap, that kind of thing. But it was just, I'll never forget it because it's Weatherly and Trip Reeb, who used to be the GM. And they're like, so what do you think? And I was like, can we try it out? Because I don't know if I can play some of the same songs all the time without killing myself. And the two of them were like, what?
Yeah.
And I was like, I know there are thousands of people who want this job and are freaking out, but I'm like, I want to rock it for you, and I don't want to be there if I'm not happy. Like I know myself. Like I will slowly like self-sabotage to get the hell out of here because I hate it. And so we did. We tried it out, and then I was like, yeah, I can do this. I can find a way to make this interesting and fun and bring new things. And
it's part of the challenge of the job, really. It's, I'm like, oh, what am I going to say? Out,
the Red Hot Chili Peppers again. Hey, Sublime. Cool.
Yeah, but it's like it's a super challenging part of the job. Some days I can seize it better than others,
I think we all can. Along with the writing stuff, I was like, all right, I'm going to look at this as like the shortest stand-up routine each break. Like,
yes.
What can I say in 13 seconds that's going to either make you laugh or piss you off? So that was kind of like where I was like, all right, this is the good challenge and how I can do that stuff. I still feel that way.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, what else am I going to say about the Red Hot Chili Peppers?
Yeah, exactly.
I love them, dudes, but
I know.
Come on.
Yeah, exactly. We've been doing this for so long. It's just like, you just get it's like you don't even know that you're like hearing, same with the commercials and stuff. I'm like, oh, I don't even know what's like.
Oh, I have no
idea what's going on, Like, you just drown it out.
I feel like I only use so much memory in my brain, and then I just like get rid of all of it. Like so many gigs of memory, and like I have to clear my flash drive all the time.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So talk about starting Locals Only and like how because I don't know anything about that.
Okay, so we've had local shows like Zeke, who was an amazing host of Zeke's Backyard. His Music from Your Own Backyard was a local show, and Rodney certainly covered a lot of local music. But Zeke's Music from Your Own Backyard was specifically local to LA, and he was like, I'm going to be a filmmaker, so I'm leaving to do these films, and I was like. So there was this hole in at KROQ. I was like, we're not like representing, even though our playlist is full of amazing local talents, we don't have that thing. I mean, yeah, Rodney was doing it, but he's also playing music from around the world. It wasn't just focused on, Southern California. And so I was like, it has to be done. Like somebody's going to pick it up. And so Zeke's show used to be Wednesdays at midnight, and it was only a half hour. And so I pitched Kevin, and I was like, look, we need to do this, and the only way I'm going to do it is if it's before midnight, and it has to at least be an hour long. Mm-hmm. This needs the credit it deserves. These bands deserve, to be played like people hours, And but it took like a year to happen because, we had Loveline on and we had Rodney, and like usually those specialty shows are relegated to Sundays, and so there's no time, and like we had Jonesy, so there's all these like hours that were already taken up. And I was like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to just start it on a midnight somewhere and then wait for it to move up, because I know it wouldn't happen. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't set that precedent. I was like, nope, just going to wait. Just going to wait until time opens up. And sure enough, things happened. Loveline hours changed. Rodney's hours changed. Steve's hour. Steve left. All that stuff. So we finally got the go-ahead to do the show and start it for an hour. And I was like, it was like 9 p.m. right before Loveline. And I was like 9 p.m.
That's awesome.
It's like,
it's a huge,
dudes.
yeah, for a specialty show, yeah.
And people, bands I don't think they understand like getting played on a station like KROQ, like how massive it is. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like they just think that's like the way it goes. And I'm like, that's not how it goes a lot of places. Mm-hmm. And a lot of specialty shows don't last because this. Ratings are always like the lowest because it's new music and it's unfamiliar and all that stuff. But, we did really well. And then, thanks to Mercedes-Benz, because, man, they came on board and they were like, yeah, we want to be a sponsor. And you know as well as I do, a sponsor is everything, especially to a specialty show. And they've kept that show on the air for well over a decade. And then we got a second hour. We got bumped to 2 hours. Yes. And I was like, oh, my God. And, I just think it was one of those. It was amazing. Like, it was one of those things where it fulfilled my like indie rock needs.
Yeah, totally. Like you got to curate your own 2 hours of music.
So I found that world within the KROQ world, and so got to help artists like Silver Sun Pickups and Young the Giant and Local Natives and all these Billie Eilish. When no one cared and crickets, I sent it to everybody in the industry. Billie Eilish.
Don't you love that?
No one. I put on local shows with her. Mm-hmm. I've put on local shows with Katy Perry. I've put on I have flyers with those things, and that's where they all kind of happen. But and then like everybody's like, where did they come from? Yeah. And I'm like, oh, you want me to find that email? Because hey, I got it right here. Remember when I told you to pay attention?
Remember I told you to come out to the show?
Yeah. Remember when I told you? Yeah. So. So it's been really great. It's been super fun to be able to do it.
Well, I just think it's so cool. Like, I don't know, you just really make these bands like. Just, I think, give them a boost of confidence, give them hope, give them a platform, like a space to be heard. Yeah.
You know how it is. I mean, look, our job is easy when we get great music, and I just put it into a playlist, and talk about shows. But I want to play bands that I know we're working hard, not the ones who are like smoking a doob and think they made a great song. Like, dudes, then stay smoking a doob and making songs, but I don't want to play you. I want to play those looking to build a career, like those who are hustling. And there are a lot of them. So it's been really, really fun. Mm-hmm. It's been fun to be a part of their journey, because it really, there are managers and record labels paying attention to that playlist.
Right.
And so it's just one of those things where it's nice to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
And get thanks later.
Well, yeah, and I don't know. It's just really a cool thing that I think that KROQ does, and and I love that you're continuing to like carry the torch for that. And I do want to talk, because we were talking the other night about Local Natives, because they're going to be in our HD Radio Sound space.
I'm going to host that. Yeah.
And I was telling you like that I love them from the beginning, from Gorilla Manor, and you were just saying that you had a little bit of a funny story about them.
So they were, when they were starting out, because they were in Orange County, I believe, that's where they first got together. I was doing shows at Slide Bar in Fullerton, because I was like, as much of a pain in the ass it is to drive down there from the 323, I was still like, you know what, we have to like not just represent cool Silver Lake, like the Silver Lake bands need to play in Orange County, and vice versa, and like get out of their comfort zone. I need to get out of my comfort zone. And, the Slide Bar, they were great. They ended up building a room with a stage. Like
they support so much local music. It's amazing.
They didn't have that stage when we started. And then they were like, well, maybe we should build the stage. And we're like, yeah, build the stage. So they ended up doing this. And I was like, oh, my God, this is amazing. And one night I'm there for a show. And Taylor from Local Natives comes up and he's like, hey, I'm Taylor. I have a band. And, we came here to give you our CD. And I was like, oh, my God, that's so cute. And we start talking. And I don't know, we were just talking about dumb stuff. And he was telling me how they were going to go do like a little mini tour and they were looking for books to read. And I just remember I was like, I don't know why we came up with the book, but that story Alive, do you remember about it was like the soccer players whose plane went down and then in the Alps and they had to like eat each other?
Oh, yeah.
I'm probably getting all those details wrong.
But I like vaguely remember it. I don't think that I read it, but I remember hearing about
They made a movie out of it.
Okay,
like it was a true
then
story.
That might be what it was.
Yeah,
okay.
like their plane crashed and it was, in the snow and it was just a horrific ordeal. He was like, what? And I'm like, maybe that's a good one. So he sent me this picture of himself reading it and so it was just one of those things. And I, 99% of the time when someone hands me a CD or, in person or, sends it, it's not good. And this stuff was like ready to go. And I was like, what? It was also music that it wasn't really what was going on at the time. Mm-hmm. Like it was a different thing. But I was like, that's cool. So I started playing them, and then I started playing them a lot, like all different tracks. And they were like, we're moving to LA. We're going to get a house together and do stuff. I'm like, that's awesome. So I presented their shows at like the Satellite, at the Silver Lake Lounge. I had told friends about it. I told, my friend Phil Costello, who's their manager, so like come and see them. And so he went and saw them and then became their manager.
Yeah. That's amazing. And like you help make that happen for them.
I know, but it was like one of those things where it's like it's just so easy. You know how it is, like when you just
know people. Yeah, you're just like, oh yeah, here, link this up and
skin off
done.
my back. Like I just want you're good people. You're good people. You guys could probably work together, and then it was great. And and then we got to I got to book them at the KROQ Coachella House one year, which was great. Mm-hmm. That was a year. You weren't here yet. We were like next to a golf course, so like balls were coming flying over at us. So it's been a long history with Local Natives. So to like have them have a single that finally kind of broke that ceiling they were kind of stuck under. In the indie world, it's like starting to bleed through. And so I'm super thrilled that we're going to have them in the...
I know, me too. Yeah. I'm so excited. Yeah. I love them a lot.
All right, good. Well, I'll leave a space for you.
Yes, please.
I will.
And then, so, transitioning out of KROQ and kind of moving more into where I know you're on Sirius now, and you're still with KROQ, obviously.
Yeah.
But maybe just talk about like how that felt, and I'm sure it was a little bit bittersweet, but also you do so many other things like your writing and so many other things. So just how that transition was.
Well, so earlier I talked about, being bored if I was going to be playing certain things, over and over again. And a few years ago, I started to feel that way. And then I started to feel anxiety about feeling that. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh no, all right, it's time. Like I've done this job. It's time for me to do something else, because it wasn't a challenge anymore. It was kind of like I didn't want to be Bill Murray in Groundhog Day with the same song, and I'm just like living the same day over and over. Mm-hmm. I need more creative fulfillment, and so I was like, all right, you know what? Sirius is a different animal because you can talk longer. Mm-hmm. It's not those 13-second hits. Like I can actually tell a story, and I have so much history in music that I can use the time. And so my old boss, that was the PD that hired me at Y107, is like the head of Sirius.
What the hell?
Yeah, and he, Steve Blatter is like, an amazing guy because he left. I remember he left Y107 to do this new thing, satellite radio, and a lot of people poo-pooed him and kind of scoffed at him. And he was like ahead of the game. I was like, I appreciate that, that kind of thing. And so I was like, dude, I'm still full-time at KROQ, but I would love to get my toe, dip it in something else. I need something else to be creative. And so I started on Lithium with Sluggo. Yay!
Yeah, Sluggo.
So I did that, but I was like, the past 3 years, I was like, all right, I need to make a plan. Like, frankly, that was like part of the exit plan. I knew I had to start doing things differently. And I also was like, I want to write. I want to be a screenwriter. I need to learn how to be a screenwriter. Like, I wrote all my life, but there's a format,
right?
There's like a structure,
yeah.
And so I basically would like a UCLA extension. I would take webinars. I would read anything I could, reading scripts and whatnot, and then honing some stories. And then I started placing in some screenplay competitions, which for me was the validation I needed. It's like your friend saying you're so pretty, but you're not really you're my friend.
Like,
come
okay,
on,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, somebody else has to say it kind of to give you that confidence.
Yeah.
And so I was getting that confidence, and I was like, all right, this is a possibility. I could write. Like, this is, And I'm also laughing because my friends are like, so radio is a great plan A and writing's like a perfect plan B. It's like 2 jobs you probably should never try to do. So I was like, well, I did plan A and that worked out okay. So I'm just ballsy enough to try to switch my life now and try my hand at writing. However, at the same time, I'm doing what I also still love, which is radio.
Yep.
So, and I'm having the situation now of being a nobody in a new business. That's another like crazy headspace. Mm-hmm. Whereas anything I do in radio is kind of effortless.
Right.
And it just works. It's perfect. It's great. And there I'm like, oh my God, I'm learning stuff. Like, oh my God, my script sucks. I could totally make this better,
Tumbling.
And just trying to this is my year to get a manager, and I'm laughing, or an agent, and I'm laughing because there's a WGA business with all the agents. Everybody fired their agents. There's supposed to be a writer's strike in May. I'm it's a great year to be a writer. So, there's all these things, but, while I was trying to figure out my transition out of KROQ, I was like, if I could stay at KROQ and fill in and do the local show and, keep Mercedes on board and do, stuff at Sirius and pay my bills while also trying to do this thing that I'm really passionate about, which is write. That's my new life.
Yeah.
And so, so I was I've been manifesting that for a while now. I knew it's my last Coachella. Mm-hmm. I was this is it. And it was kind of bittersweet, but I think if anybody is done with something, you're just ready to go.
Right.
Bean and I were on the same thing, only, he had a lot more years under his belt. We were both in the same place. We were texting each other. We're oh my God, ready for something else. Still love KROQ, still everybody here, but I need a new challenge. Mm-hmm. That's what it's all about. It has nothing to do with anything else. And so, that's what's going on. I'm just writing and learning and, trying to figure out this new world. But like I said, it's a head trip to not be good at something.
Yeah. Well, I imagine. Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine. But it's been so cool, inspiring to me to watch you just do all this stuff. And I remember,
Thanks.
Years and years ago, and I think I came in and you were storyboarding some book or something, and I was just what the fuck, because you're just doing so many things all the time and diversifying yourself and not just putting all of your eggs in one basket. And that really put a light bulb off for me where I was I need to make sure I'm not just making my world this one thing and go into the other avenues that I'm interested in as well, and
I think you can be disappointed if you do have that one thing.
Yes.
And that's it, where your whole world is built around it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, sadly, that happens. So I understand where people get bitter if, they're laid off or whatnot, but I have incredible drive. I do. Again, it goes back to the people you're so lucky. I'm no, I work my ass off all the time. However, and then I have other people who are all work and no play makes, Jack a dull boy. And I was but I love what I do. So it's not really work. Mm-hmm. So I do it I do everything, but I don't feel like I'm working because I truly love it. Like, I love when I figure out a piece of my script that was driving me crazy. And then I'm like, oh, I figured it out. Or like, I think of a good line and I'm like, oh my God, I love that. Like,
totally.
I'm constantly thinking, or we do a good break and you hit the post and you're like, like that stuff.
Yes.
So I do have a lot of drive. I think it is a little sad sometimes. I think about it where it's like, I'm always like, yeah, I never like hang up a picture anywhere, and not that I would hang up a picture like at KROQ or somewhere, just because I'm always like, I'm not gonna stay. It's like a a jinx or something. Like, I'll jinx myself about staying here, getting my ass kicked out if I, the second you relax, is when you're out.
You get kicked out. Yeah.
And so I just have that thing that I always feel that I don't ever feel like I made it. Do you feel like you made it?
Oh no, no. And I think since I lost it all once, it was very important to me coming in this time to really not let the job define me.
Yeah.
That it's an aspect of my life and it's part of what I do and it's really fun and I'm good at it for now, but that you can lose it in a second. And it's really important to me to just know that there's other things in life aside from working at KROQ. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like I still feel like I'm an imposter. Like I come in and out every night. I'm like, how am I gonna do this? What am I gonna do? What am I gonna say? And then like just fucking do it. And and it's just like that. The excitement I get or the nervousness I get before I have to do an interview, that stuff never stops. And I just figure I don't think it will until I lose the fire for it. I guess,
yeah, and I don't know. You brought up something interesting, the interviews and the imposter syndrome, which I suffer from greatly, and I dread interviews because I do have that imposter syndrome, and so then it makes me tense. And then I feel I like, and then it makes me defensive. And I'm like, these people are here to like have a good time.
Yeah, totally.
But I feel like I'm so terrified of, fucking up or saying the wrong thing or looking like an asshole that I then like kind of like put this like wall up kind of thing. And so it's made interviews that I really was like dying to do just so difficult. And I've been all my life trying to sort that out.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Yeah. I mean, and there are some that go incredible, as I'm sure you can relate to. I think one of the best interviews I've ever seen was you interviewing Prophets of Rage. You did such a good job on that interview.
You know what? Again, but I let myself geek out.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? I was a huge Public Enemy fan.
Yep.
I mean, I know it like Little White Girl in the Burbs. Listen to Welcome to the Terror Dome. Way back when.
I love it.
But like, that was what I grew up with. And I was such like, I was like, oh my God, Chuck D, like I'm going to be, like I can't even deal right now, And like, huge Rage Against the Machine fan.
Yep.
And obviously, Cypler's Hill, we play all the time. And I was like, I'm going to allow myself to just be a fan. Like, and I don't care. I'll, if I'm going to look like a fool and look like this, dumb white girl, then you know what? Fuck it. Everything came from the heart. Like I was just truly a fan and just in awe of those guys.
Yeah. Well, like
and
it really showed.
I took a Xanax.
Did
also.
you? Yeah. Good call. Good call. Well, and I mean, because that's a lot of big dudes, and to go up there and to have to orchestrate all of that and the mics, and sometimes things aren't, the people don't understand how many other variables are going on.
No, they have no idea what someone just whispered in your ear before you went on stage.
Totally.
And it could be like someone who has no clue that what they just said to you is gonna mess up the next hour of you on stage. It could be anything.
Oh yeah, or like when I was interviewing Bad Religion and we couldn't get the stools to stop spinning, so I'm literally going in circles, and Jay Bentley just thinks it's funny to just keep pushing me, just keep, like, like it was just, and then I said one thing that was like just not, just one thing that fucked it all up, and it was just not one of my greatest interviews, but that shit happens.
It happens,
and we
all the
learn
time.
from it.
I think all my bad interviews are mostly because of me, because of being too inside my head.
Me too.
Because of being like, again, that imposter syndrome, not being good enough. Like, why am I interviewing this band?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really messed up place to be. But it's who I am. It's like what I have. It's what you have. Right?
And I think sometimes it's like just the chemistry with the people, because sometimes it doesn't matter. I don't know. I prepare a lot, but then there are also times where things get really busy and I'm like, I prepared as much as I could, with the time that I had. Yeah. And then sometimes it's like, it doesn't even matter because the conversation just flowed. It doesn't even matter what I prepared or not. And then other times I'm like, wow, I'm really glad I prepared for all that stuff. So I could,
because they're crickets.
You felt like, crickets. Are you like, and then in a way you're like, oh, they're like waiting to see if I know stuff. And you pull out some stuff,
Oh, we're always being tested, right? Because it's like, why would I know anything about Public Enemy?
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, let me bust this down for you.
Yeah, seriously.
Let me go through this. I mean, it's definitely that thing of like feeling constantly tested.
Yeah.
But again, this isn't a business for the weak. So it's like, it's like we got, I always say like we're kind of like Cadbury eggs, although they're gross. But, it's like they're hard on the outside, but inside, I think a lot of us are just so sensitive and really dealing with issues of imposter syndrome and all these other things. But on the outside, you got to be like,
okay,
like,
let's go.
I will like put out this fire and still do this interview and smile while I'm doing it, kind of
Absolutely.
thing. So,
yeah.
Well,
you have just been so awesome. I can't wait till I really do feel like you're gonna do something incredible with your writing. Like I just feel like that very strongly.
Thank you.
Just always rooting for you. And
I'm rooting for you too. This is fun being your guest.
Yeah.
Maybe someday I'll have a podcast and then grill you about your life.
I would love that.
And neither one of us will be nervous about it.
I know. That was the nice thing too about today. I was like, oh, it's just Kat, so it'll be fine.
I totally did not sweat coming in here.
Totally.
I was like, this is like the first time I think in a long time I've done one of these things where I was like,
it's like, this is easy. We can do this in our sleep.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks
it means the world to me. Yeah.
I'm super honored to be on this podcast. You've had many great people. So when you asked me, I was like, what?
Yeah.
They're like, she had no one else to ask.
No, not even. Thank you so much. Kat Corbett, everybody.
Megan Holiday, everybody.